and there are a couple of actors, and it's going to be a fun conversation with Nicole Richter and Ray Supranaut, and I may have said their names wrong, but we'll straighten that out in a half an hour. But my first guest is a repeat guest, Gia Milazzo Smith.
Yes.
I got it all in. And you've been on the show at least once before, but I think maybe twice.
Yeah, a couple of times.
Yeah, and it's
nice
so
to
good
be back.
to see. Well, it's good to see you. It's been a long time.
It has. It has.
And you're still doing your business called Design by Gia.
Design
and
by Gia,
we'll
yep.
pretend that nobody's heard of it before, so you
Okay.
get to brag a little bit and tell them all about it.
Sure. I own an interior design and decorating firm. We do design, renovation, from the initial consultation all the way through the construction of the project as well. And we've been in business for 23 years.
I was going to ask you what I think I interviewed you not too long after you opened the business.
Yeah, it's been a while. So, you know, I went right through the 20th year and didn't even realize it. And then I did the math and I'm like, oh my goodness, it's been 23 years.
I often ask this question of people of all occupations. Is this the way you planned your life when you were a little girl? Did you like to change the room and make it more attractive, or?
I actually did. You know, when you are in the design business, I think you have a little bit of that in you when you were growing up. And my mother loved to decorate. We always moved from house to house. We did some house flipping with my family when I was younger. So I grew up around a lot of construction and design. My aunt owned an antique store that was right next door to where we lived. So it was just really kind of the perfect storm of, you know, me being in that world of designing. So yeah, I always grew up loving moving furniture around and doing all that's involved.
Yeah, I think that's the minority, though. I think it's very few people who know at a young age what they want to do and actually follow through and end up doing it.
Yes, I agree with you.
And it's interesting the different paths life takes us on. And you would not admire me at all because I'm the kind of person that gets the furniture the way I want it and I never change it.
Well, sometimes there's only one good way, you know, and I think when you move it around a lot, it's because you really don't know what way to put it. So that just tells me you know how it should go.
Thanks. Oh, she's a diplomat too, folks. You handle that very well. But I also marvel at someone like yourself who has a talent, has a skill, but then part of it is owning your own business. And it's different from the action of redesigning things. Now you got to handle all the paperwork and all the context and intents and let people know who you are and all of that. And while we don't necessarily want to make this a commercial for your business, but I'm interested in how you balanced the artful part of it and the keeping track of business part of it.
Yeah, it's two very different sets of skills. And, you know, as most creative people, when they go into a business, they go into a business because they enjoy doing what they're doing. But then you get into business and you realize that the actual running of a business is, you know, a totally different ball game. There are so many skills that you might not necessarily have when you enter into a business. And as your business grows, that takes more and more of your time. So you either learn as you go or you know, get help where you need help. And I think that's one of the things that made me successful entering into the business field of interior design, which is totally different than designing a space for yourself. When you're working for someone else, you really have to care about their space, their life, how they want to live. So just that alone is a little bit different when you go into designing somebody else's house. But the set of skills that are involved in running a business, you kind of have to learn as you go. And one of the things that has helped me is to know what I'm good at and what I'm not and get the help where I need help.
So that, yeah, it's nice if you can afford to hire somebody to handle the parts that you don't want to do.
And as you build, you know, you give up a little portion here and there. You know, you might start out a business and be doing everything yourself. And, you know, I'm a very small operation myself, but I surround myself with people and contractors and accountants and, you know, all of the things that you need to run a business. And as needed, you know, I can bring them in to assist me.
And it's an interesting business because it's a wide variety of types of people you're dealing with. And I know people who are very good decorators but wouldn't think of, you know, doing it as a business. And how do you balance that? And do you ever have clients that it's got to be their way or the highway, and you don't think that's the best thing to do?
Well, most people come to an interior designer and because they need help. So, and how much they're willing to listen and take that advice is certainly up to them. But most people that come to me do want some input, or they've tried it on their own and they realize that they're going in circles over just a paint color for sometimes decades, and at some point they decide that they're going to get help. And I think when you're doing a room for yourself, it's different. You can just pick things that you like, you can redo it, you can do a little bit at a time, you go as you go, and you don't know what you don't know. When you're doing a room for someone else, your job is to be successful the very first time. So you want to take all of that information that you learn about that client and do the best job that you can using the skills that you have, but also knowing that at the end it will be successful and the client will love it. So, being able to have those conversations in the beginning with the client, knowing what to ask and how to take that information and translate it into a good design, and also knowing that clients sometimes are scared. They might have come to you because they want help, but they're not really sure. And, I do drawings, and we do, great design presentations where we can show you what we're going to do, but there's no way to actually see it until you walk into that finished space. And I can say most of the time it's way better than they've ever imagined. So that's an exciting part of the project for me.
Well, some of those shows we see on TV with the brothers that redo houses, and the shocked reaction people when they go in and see the revised version. Now, did you go to school for the interior design?
I didn't go to school for interior design, but like I told you before, I very much grew up around the construction industry, which was really a big foot forward with doing interior design. But I studied art and was around a lot of design-oriented people growing up, so that really helped. And I did several of my own houses and just kind of started evolving. Worked for a contractor for many years, and then it started evolving and took off on my own business. I had business before I really had a business, so people were always seeing things that I did and really wanted me to assist them, and so that's how I started. And of course you learn, as you go, and being around a lot of great craftsmen and in the construction industry, you learn so much about what can be designed and what can't, and that really kind of gave me an edge in the design field.
Well, I was wondering, has it gotten easier than it was 20 years ago?
No, I mean,
Boy,
no.
You didn't even take a breath before you answered that.
It's gotten easier, as far as my knowledge and my expertise has developed in those, 23 years, of course. But, I can go in and know exactly what I'm going to do after I talk to that client and get that information. I know what's going to work in the space. I know what would be appropriate. I know what would work with that family after talking with them. But, the industry itself, there's less craftsmen than there were, maybe 20 years ago. And everybody has trouble getting labor and help issues. So that's made it a little bit more difficult. And of course, then we had COVID a few years ago, which kind of knocked everything, every industry. And for our industry, we had so much work come in all at once, which was great, but we also had supply chain issues and all of that. And that's getting back to normal, but it still never went back to totally normal. So having to kind of, evolve as the world evolved, I think that's where the most difficulty comes. Luckily, I was in business a long time when, we've been through recessions, we've been through, COVID, we've been through all of those things that have kind of, rocked the industry a little bit. And luckily, we were able to kind of steer the boat and go along with things. And but there's never a dull day.
What would an average day be like?
An average day, I can plan out what we're going to do I might be designing in my office, but also managing one of our construction projects where we're implementing one of the projects that I've designed. So that might involve a visit to the site to see the development of that project. It might involve, phone calls with clients. It might involve a site visit with a new client that's just coming in, and then maybe back to my office to do some more design work. And, things come up, especially in the construction industry. So there might be, something that they found in a wall that was unanticipated. We might have to make some changes, or we might have to, think on our feet. And that's why having a designer, involved throughout a renovation project is really, really key to the success of it, because the well-laid plans are great, but you have to be able to kind of think and evolve on your feet as well.
But I don't think, when you say you're an interior designer, I don't think people think in terms of new construction.
Well, I think that it depends. I mean, up here in New England, we have a lot of existing homes, but we do new construction as well. You know, there are times when someone comes in and they're building a home and they need help from start to finish with the entire process. And so what we'll do, they might have someone already building it, or they might need some help building it. So we can help with either one of those clients. And so I might prepare a design for the entire home, which is key, especially when you're building a house, because there are so many decisions that really have to be made and should be made in the right order if you want your design to really come out, you know, successfully, where you really love it. In the end, everything has to be really well thought out. And sometimes when you're building, you know, you're kind of, if you don't have that person in place that knows those decisions are coming and has to have all of that information ready for the builders. So if you're building yourself, or if you're doing it with an independent person building, they don't necessarily ask you, you know, we might need the lighting, where are the lights going to go? Well, you might not have bought the lights yet. But if you're working with a designer, we know what those lights are. We know the measurements of the lights. We know exactly the height that they're going to be hung. Therefore, we know exactly where that rough wiring needs to be. So in the end, it comes out how we planned it. So those are some of the things that, you know, when you're doing new construction, come up a lot. When you're doing a renovation, you know, it's hard for people to see through what they have now. So, you know, being able to have a fresh set of eyes that knows how the space can transform is really key.
Yeah, I've done construction twice. Built new houses, had new houses built, and each time I swore I never would do it again. And some people love it. As a realtor, I have clients that want new construction and they don't want it anyway else, and they love watching the process. I didn't like it, but the second house was. It had been already completed and it wasn't sold, and it didn't have light fixtures or the appliances. I thought of that when you talked about light fixtures, because I'm the kind of person that if I walk in a lighting place and there's, you know, 2,700 lights up there, I can't picture how it's going to look over my credenza or whatever. And that's where an expert like you comes in handy, I'm sure.
Yeah, most people can't visualize scale and how it relates to other items, especially if you're doing a renovation or if you're building a new construction. Nothing's in place yet. So, you know, someone says, go find a chandelier. What kind of, my first question is, what is your table? What is the size of the room? How tall are your ceilings? You know, all of that information will tell me the exact size that your fixture needs to be. And then we look at style and the personal likes and dislikes, and all of that comes into play. But scale is one area that most people really have trouble visualizing, especially, like you said, you go into a big lighting store, most of the time you have really tall ceilings, you know, it's almost like a warehouse. You don't have those ceilings going in your new home. So
I didn't know you then, by the way. But I could have used you, but I didn't know you then.
Yes, well, I'm always here.
So if you're sitting down with a prospective client, what is the first thing, you know, do you have a specific list of do's and don'ts, or what you like and what you don't like? How do you get it off the ground from that point to deciding what the finished product's going to look like?
Well, most of the time when someone calls me, let's say it's for a renovation of a space, maybe a kitchen or a bathroom or an entire home, a lot of times people have been thinking about this project for a really long time. So I really want to hear what they have to say. They might have ideas that they want to run by me, or thoughts about what doesn't work in the space and what does. And if they have all of that ready for me, then great. I want to really hear what their thoughts are about the space. And then sometimes people are just frustrated. They can tell me a lot about what they don't like, and then I kind of ask questions about their lifestyle. Do they have children? Do they have pets? Where do they like to, you know, eat in the morning? Do they usually sit down for breakfast together? Or, you know, depending on the room that we're designing, there are a lot of questions specific to that, and that tells me a little bit about how the flow of the space is going to go. Then I look at the home, I look at the amount of space that's there, maybe look at the adjoining rooms. I look at their list of things that they really would like in their new space, and I might add a few ideas that they haven't thought of. Usually there are, because of looking at that lifestyle and being able to come in with a fresh set of eyes and with some expertise saying, you're always doing over something at the end of your kitchen countertop because you've only got 2 feet of countertop, but if you had a larger space, you might be cooking a little bit differently. So I kind of have to sift through some of that information and see what is really necessary for their room, look at the architecture that's there, look at the budget constraints, look at some of the things that they're thinking about doing, and I can usually steer them in a good direction, and then we can start to really nail down what we should design.
As a realtor, we like it when people realize that, in our opinion, the kitchen's probably the primary place that you want to look really good, with the bathroom being second.
Yes.
You agree with that?
I agree with that, and I've seen so many just lifestyle transformations over having that kitchen or bathroom redone. Especially the kitchen, because the whole family uses that kitchen. And if you go into a space and it's really not functioning well, and it's frustrating you every single day that you try to prepare meals or you're entertaining, it really weighs on you after a while. So having that space completely customized to your family's needs and with everything new and really designed properly so that there are no areas where you say, well, I would have done this different, or I would have done that different. It's really well thought out so that you don't have that in the end, and you're really, excited and happy to be in there.
Give me an example of something that's not functioning well and maybe makes your teeth itch when you walk in.
Well, one of those, there's a lot of things, but for instance, if we're designing a kitchen, those corner cabinets with the Lazy Susan, they don't necessarily work that well in any space. And it's one of the things that I try to eliminate. If somebody's really got to have a Lazy Susan, then so be it. But there are so many other ways to use that interior corner space of a line of cabinetry that will be more useful and provide much more storage and be easier to operate, that I try to steer away from those.
I've had a couple of them fixed. A carpenter come
so
in
you're
and
with me on the Lazy Susan.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with you on the Lazy Susan.
That's one of those small things in a kitchen that I usually try to eliminate, because people are so much happier in the long run. People just don't know what to do with that space. And so when you come with different ideas, people are usually very open to it and very happy that.
And I think there's something about the timing, what's popular. When those first came out, they were probably very, very popular. And then as time goes on, maybe you realize it's not as practical. But there's been some wonderful pantry ideas and partitions that come out, and you can put in twice as much stuff as you would have expected.
Oh, there's so many things now to choose from, and you really, when you're immersed in the world every day, you know what those things are. Most people that come and decide that they're going to renovate a kitchen space, they might be thinking about it for 5 years, 10 years, sometimes 15 or 20 years. So, they start preparing those ideas of what they might like to have, and in the meantime, other ideas have come. So sometimes those initial thoughts of what they might want to do are something that they've seen 10 or 15 years ago. So being able to take the initial, what are you trying to accomplish, and coming up with those new ideas and things, and knowing what's out there and available and what will work for your house. So some ideas are great, but not all of them will work in your space.
Well, and I think a lot depends on, is it a large family or is it a couple? Is it people that entertain a lot, or they just want it reviewed for themselves? There's a lot of things to consider.
There's a lot of things to consider, especially with a kitchen or a bathroom. For bathrooms, there's safety issues that are involved. You really need to make sure not only that the space looks great, but it functions well and it's safe. Nobody's going to slip. I see so many times people use tile on the floor that's not meant to be on a floor in a bathroom. So, glossy surfaces in the bathroom don't mix well, so with wet feet. So you want to really know where to use certain items. Not every piece of tile is appropriate to use for, every surface. So just knowing what to use and where to use it. For a kitchen, just being able to know, does this person bake a lot? Do they have a lot of china? Do they entertain often? And when they do entertain, is it just maybe a couple of people, or is it 50 people for a big party? Knowing what to ask and knowing that the answers to those questions help to shape the design.
But things change over years, and I know several friends that along with me, that had inherited grandma's china and grandma's silver, and I'm told nobody under 50 has those kind of dinner parties anymore.
Yeah, well, that's just it. I mean, people are so different, you know, and every client comes to me with a whole different set of circumstances. And I have people that are, you know, much younger that enjoy those types of things as well. And I have people that are much younger that come in and they, you know, all they really know is IKEA, and that's fine. They know they like that modern design. But what I try to keep up on is I know what the current trends are, but I try to design a space that'll be timeless, so that when trends come and go, you can bring in a few trendy items that you're really fond of. But in 5 years, when that's not popular anymore, you know, the main frame of the design is something that will last a long time, especially when you're talking about kitchens and bathrooms, you know, even living room spaces. You know, you're buying furnishings, and if you buy good quality furniture, you want it to last a long time. So, you know, buying a sofa in a super trendy fabric maybe not be the best idea unless you plan on changing that every few years. So maybe using a solid fabric or something that's going to be a little more timeless, and then being able to bring in accent pieces and, you know, other things that you might change more often, like throw pillows and accessories in some of those trends.
We were talking earlier about new construction, and I love it when I see new construction going on. I think that's a very good sign of a good economy. And it's, you know, it was at a low schedule for a while, and now it seems to be coming back, that I see more new homes being built. But I would imagine that your work is very different from new construction versus just kind of making a medium-age house look new. And then in New England, we also have a lot of antique homes. And I remember when we talked before, you've worked with a lot of antique homes.
Yes, a lot of antique homes.
Which you don't necessarily want to modernize because it's a charm all its own.
Right. Most people buy an older home because they like the charm of what's there, some of the woodwork, you know, the high ceilings. You know, there are some details in an older home that are just beautiful, and a person that buys them loves those details. Being able to, you just don't want to take a modern kitchen and put it into that kind of home. Now, there are ways that you can modernize a new kitchen and renovate that space so that it looks like it was always in the house, but it still has all of the modern conveniences. It might have a more modern color scheme, but it has some of those traditional details. So the trick is to kind of marry those ideas and styles in a way that looks current and up to date, but also looks a little more timeless. And so I think that's something that I'm going to keep coming back to, because having that timeless look to it so that you don't know when that kitchen was built. You know, this might be an 1800s home, but the kitchen was built in 2023. You don't want to know that when you walk in to the house. So being able to marry the old with the new in a way that really is appropriate for the house, but gives that client everything that they need is important.
I love the butler pantries in some of the older houses.
I do too, yeah.
And as a matter of fact, Fitchburg used to routinely have a house tour every Christmas, and then COVID came and everything changed, but I don't think we've done that for a while, but it's so much fun to go in and see these antique homes.
It's so much fun, and we've done a lot of them, and you know, we work all over the state, so we have clients that have just the most beautiful homes, and some of them come to me when they originally buy that house and that older home, and you see such original details, and you talk to the client about what they love and what they don't, what they want to keep and what they don't, and we can usually come up with a design that works. But I love finding those old butler pantries, and usually, you know, the homeowner that has a house like that wants to save that, and you know, might have been part of what attracted them to that space. So I love being able to go back and revisit some of these spaces even after we've renovated them with repeat clients, and being able to, you know, see them living in the space after we've designed it, and the meld of how the old and the new really functions well.
Now, this may seem like a silly question, but how important are windows?
Windows are very important. The size, the scale of the windows, do they go well with the size and scale of the room? And then you have the architectural, you know, style of the window and how it goes well with the home itself from the inside and from the outside. So windows are super important in the design of the space, of course for energy efficiency as well. And that's where, when you have an older home, being able to do that properly so that it looks like an older window, but it still functions and still has the modern elements that we desire in a window today.
Yeah, and I've since I met you, I've been on your mailing list, so I get your emails, and I notice you have a lot of things going on at your business, and you have other artists coming in, and tell me about how you've expanded and what you're concentrating on.
Well, we have a lot of artists that work with us on a design. For instance, if we have, we just finished a beautiful dining room project, and we have a wallpaper that we used for the space, and it was a hand-painted mural. And so that's an artist that, you know, I was able to find and search out and have them make that mural and scale it to the room for us. So that's a great way to, you know, bring something that's really original to your space, is being able to kind of pull from different artists and I've got different cabinet makers and furniture makers, and, you know, a whole source of artists that really can make some beautiful things. And anytime you can buy something that's original or that's handmade, I think it adds a lot to the space. So
but you actually have showings of art shows there in your business, don't you?
No, I don't have any art shows.
Oh, you don't? Okay.
No.
You just mentioned some names then in the email of people that you're working with, I presume. Is that what I'm thinking
Yes,
of?
I'm not sure which email, but it was. But yes, occasionally if we're doing maybe a designer show house or something like that, we'll pull in some artists that will maybe do some artwork for the space for us.
What's the biggest mistake most people make in decorating?
They don't look at the entire space when they're decorating. They look at each individual object and they just pick the prettiest one. I would say most people have a hard time visualizing it all together, but not every piece of, not every item that goes into a room should be the star. So
that's interesting.
Right. So when you pick everything individually, you know, let's say you're picking a carpet, and you have, you know, all the little carpet samples to choose from, and you just choose the prettiest one, the one that you like the best. Well, when you see it as a wall-to-wall carpet, or if you see it as an area rug, or whatever you're doing with it on the stairs, it might look totally different, and it might be too much because you have other things going on in the space. You have furnishings, you have window treatments, you have you know, other elements that are going on. In a kitchen or a bathroom, you might have tile, or, you know, there's just 100 other things, artwork. So you want to pick things, know what's going to be the star in your room and what isn't, and what will take more of a back seat, and being able to mix things together in a way that not everything is screaming for your attention when you walk in.
And how do you decide whether to have carpeting or hardwood or whatever?
Well, that depends a lot on the client, and it depends a lot on the house. You know, in bedrooms, sometimes people want the soft carpet underneath, but, you know, sometimes, based on the budget that we have, wall-to-wall carpet is the way to go. Sometimes an area rug is great if you can do hardwood floors underneath, and then do, you know, an area rug underneath the bed that you'll see some of it and you'll see the wood. That's nice too. Depends a lot on the whole house. You know, to decide on a floor in a room, I look at what's going on in the entire house. And a lot of times, if you have a lot of different floors in every room, you tend to get a little bit too busy. And so if you can unify that look one way or another, whether with color or materials, it does help, especially if you have an open floor plan and things are kind of a little more connected. So it just depends on the house and the space, and sometimes the budget and what you're doing with the rest of the home. You know, there are some very unique designs that, you know, you would say, okay, I have to definitely use this type of a floor with this, you know, but based on where you're coming from, where's the hall, where are you connecting, you'd make those decisions based on a lot of different factors.
You used a key word in there, budget. Because I'm sure that's a lot of what a lot of people are thinking about. Oh my goodness, what is it going to cost? And I would presume, and correct me if I'm wrong, that you have a scale that, you know, it depends on what you need and what you could afford.
Yeah, that's why a lot of times when I first meet that client, we discuss, you know, how much are you really looking to put into the space? Because if you're looking to do, you know, based on what you have for a budget, if you've thought about that, then with the budget that you have, you might be able to do certain things. If your budget is larger, okay, maybe a full-scale renovation is feasible for you. So those are the conversations that we have during that first meeting, and we can help to kind of steer and help the client no matter what direction they're going in. But what we want to make sure that we do is design a space that is doable for the client.
We got a lot of information here.
We did.
I got a lot of free tips here. So we're all out of time, but thank you so much. I knew we'd have a good time talking about this.
Thank you for having me. It's always such a thrill to see you again.
Well, thank you, and keep up the good work, and we'll stay in touch.
Okay, great.
Don't you go out there, because I